24th. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Select Board meeting of March 24th. This is a extra meeting that we scheduled in order to take care of some important business. We're going to go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, but I wanted to say that Francine Tishman is participating remotely via telephone for tonight's meeting. All votes will be by roll call vote, and we will be addressing guidance around remote participation in meetings. We do have a quorum in the room, so that meets the obligation. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I just need to read sort of a preamble to this meeting. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 and March 23rd order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that can gather in one place, the meeting of the Town of Southampton Selectboard is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so by watching public access TV, Charter Spectrum Channel 191. In-person attendance and public comment at Select meetings will be suspended until further notice. If you email a written public comment before the scheduled Select Board meeting, it will be read at that Select Board meeting. If you email a written public comment after viewing something at a live televised Select Board meeting, it will be read at the next Select Board meeting. Please send your public comments via email to selectmen@townofsouthampton.org. Please note that all public comments must be within the requirements of the policy on public comments listed in the open time for the public on the Select Board agenda. So that is that. I'm going to ask if it's okay with the committee here, if we could jump right to the remote participation, because I think that's of the utmost importance since we're technically doing that. So thank you, Chris, who has actually proposed this long before it was even necessary, but she has also drafted some guidance, and Ed has also chimed in. We've had a chance to review it in preparation for tonight's meeting. And so, do people have that handy?
Yeah.
Let me just find.
You could have two different versions there, the original and then one with some bold type that I added to it.
One what? That you had, yeah, we got that online.
Yep.
Yep.
On the left side of your packet, the bold type one.
Yeah. So, any comments?
Well, just a note, I guess this is...
Do you have a microphone?
Oh, yeah. I got to do it this way, sorry. I'm trying to do it the right way here. I'm trying to model behavior since I was making masks today, so I thought, this makes me feel better, so I'm fine otherwise.
Good.
I started drafting this guideline, as Rini said, before this whole emergency order came into play, and so it was basically to try and address remote participation in public meetings for the town, and it came about as a request from Concom originally, since they were short of members and were always having trouble with people getting here in time for the meetings because of work commitments, et cetera. So this was drafted with that in mind, where it's still the normal rules, if I can say that, where we would need to have a quorum present, but somebody who was unable to attend or was sick at home or whatever could call in and participate in the meeting. So that predates our whole current situation. But at some point, I guess we should be aiming to get back to normal. And so this is something that's probably more for the future, because I think the current regulations now have eliminated the need for a quorum to be present, and it allows for more video conferencing and so forth, I think. So Ed, I don't know what else you want to add to this?
That's correct, and I think at this time it's very important to distinguish the two, that what we're talking about is for normal, regular once this emergency is over with, remote participation for boards and committees. And the rules and regulations of the two are different. And I would say, even though Governor Baker's order relaxed the open meeting laws, I would say that in some instances you could also say that for remote participation under the emergency order, some of it is actually a little more stringent than what is in here. And I don't know if you'd like me to read the redrafted one to everyone. I'll be happy to do that.
I was going to ask someone to read it, so if you're willing to do that, go ahead.
Sure. It's draft guidelines, remote participation in public meetings, Town of Southampton. Purpose: in order to accommodate committee, commission, and board member schedules and still allow for the normal business of the Town of Southampton's local government to continue, the possibility of remote participation is allowed according to the following guidelines. Background: from time to time, appointed and elected members of the town governing structure have scheduling conflicts at their workplace or home that make it difficult to attend posted weeknight meetings at the town hall. Members of various committees, commissions, and boards may also occasionally have personal issues of family responsibility or illness that prevent them from being in attendance at such meetings. Availability of a remote participation option will also allow for greater participation in local government. Discussion. The intent of these guidelines is to provide immediate flexibility in meeting participation requirements while still adhering to Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, MGL 30A, sections 18 through 25. This experience will inform the town administrator and select board of issues and technologies that may be best suited for long-term remote use, particularly as IT improvements and investment are envisaged later in the year. All meetings at one of 3 locations in Town Hall would benefit from this option. Any committee, commission, or board of the Town of Southampton still would abide by current regulations requiring a quorum to be present. For these purposes, note that determining a quorum is based upon the membership as constituted for that particular group, whether or not a vacancy exists. In all cases, a quorum must be physically present at the meeting, but depending on membership, 1 or 2 persons would have the ability to participate remotely when the need occurred. It should be noted that this is not intended to be the mode of regular participation of a member, but rather used with discretion. Requirements. In lieu of a conference phone system, a Bluetooth speaker and a Bluetooth-compatible cell phone may be used. To ensure good quality recording or live broadcast, if being used for the meeting, the Bluetooth speaker needs to be located next to an audio microphone. For the listening and viewing audience, the meeting chair must indicate by name who is present and who will be joining the meeting remotely at the beginning of the meeting, per open meeting law guidelines. Internet or satellite-enabled audio or video conferencing or any other technology that enables the remote participant and all persons present at the meeting location to be clearly audible to one another is permissible. In order to minimize distracting noise, the remote participant will maintain their computer, phone on mute when they are not speaking to the meeting. All votes on issues before the committee, commission, board are to be done by roll call, with the member stating that their last name prior to their vote. All of the requirements of remote participation under the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, Section 2910, shall be strictly adhered to. Action. The recommendation is for the Select Board to approve these guidelines and for them to be effective as of March 23rd, 2020. The town administrator is hereby authorized to disseminate this information to all town committees, commissions, and boards.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the guidelines?
Oh, good job.
Yeah, very good job. Thank you.
There's 2 points, just as you mentioned, Ed referenced the last paragraph of the 2910 of the remote participation by the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law. And that's in our packet too, but Ed, under the technology part, there's 2 things I noticed that maybe we might want to include in this, unless you feel it's already there. Under the technology part, there's B and C, when video technology is in use The remote participant shall be clearly visible to all persons present in the meeting location. And C, the public body shall determine which of the acceptable methods may be used by its members. I don't know if we might want to add those 2 points from the 2910 open meeting law guidance into this memo.
Can you
did
read the
not.
second part
Yep.
for me again, please?
The public body shall determine which of the acceptable methods may be used by its members. So whether it's by phone or by video.
The public decides.
No, the public body, so the meeting.
Oh, us.
The meeting,
Right.
Oh, okay.
whoever's holding the meeting, yeah. And then if video technology is in use, the remote participant shall be clearly visible to all persons. So in other words, if we had it on a laptop rather than being filmed, I think.
Right.
Right. So I don't know if we should include that, maybe?
Right.
But those are in the law, right?
Right. So, but it's just, as we had the last bold section right before the action, so all other requirements of remote participation under the open meeting law, I'm just wondering if those two ought to just be put in there so that nobody has any questions about it and doesn't have to go look for them, that's all.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that because I think that down the road, I mean, one, I think upside of this is going to be the huge advancement in video technology.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we can have a situation where everybody, if anybody's on Zoom or any other platform, that they'd be able to be seen. I don't know if that's feasible right this minute, but, you know, that would be
That's
important.
tough on Zoom, depending on, unless you had a
Yeah.
camera,
Unless you have a camera, right.
laptop.
But I mean, I'm comfortable with adding that.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the law, but like Chris said, it's a reminder when people read this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it just
Okay.
avoids people from having to go search for something elsewhere. It's like it's all in one
Yeah.
place is my
I agree.
Okay.
comment on that.
Francine, do you have a comment on that?
Oops.
Yeah, I agree. I think the more explicit we can be. Yeah, I agree. I think the
Little
more
echo.
explicit we can be.
She's watching it on TV. She should turn her TV
Yeah.
off.
Oh,
Can you, Francine, is your TV on?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're hearing a delay, and I think that is actually,
Let me mute it. How's that?
yeah, you definitely have to mute it, yeah.
Can you hear me? Is that better?
Much better now.
I have to tell you, I have to listen to it on the television.
Okay, well, just mute it if you wouldn't mind when you're speaking then.
Right. Okay. Now it's clear.
Now it's very clear.
Okay. All right. So anyway, I was just saying the more explicit we could be with everyone in the full document, that just makes it easier, as Chris was saying. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? Would you like to make a motion then? Somebody?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we accept these draft guidelines as final guidelines with the 2 additional items that Chris brought up.
Okay, and,
Second.
okay, did you want to include those for Ed then, so that he has them
Sure, yeah.
handy? Do you need her to repeat those, or do you have? B and C.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
under the, technology, so it's section 6, B and C, right?
Okay. Any other question or comment? Okay, a roll call vote then?
Fowles eye.
Roland, aye.
Martin,
Aye.
aye. Sorry.
Roll call vote, Francine?
Tishman, aye.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, I just feel better having taken care of that first, so
Need
that
to vote.
because, pardon?
Did you vote?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's unanimous. I feel better having addressed that first, just because we are officially doing remote participation, and we do have a quorum in the room, so either way, it's passed unanimously. But I just wanted to start the meeting after that by just saying that we are really in unprecedented times here, and I just appeal to everybody to be safe, to follow the guidelines from our Emergency Management Director, Public Health, Governor, DPH, to maintain the social distancing, and also to make sure that if you're at risk, that you protect yourself. We certainly don't want to have, we want to kind of keep this as, quiet as possible, level the curb, as they say, and so please take care of each other and take care of yourselves. And with that, we can go down the list again. I don't know that anybody has any select board reports, do they? I mean, we haven't had any meetings. I would ask you, Ed, you probably have some reports, right?
Just one note, we will, while Ed's getting that, we will hopefully plan on having our master plan meeting. We were going to do that, but remotely on Monday. We're still aiming to do that, and it may be that PVPC might host it for us remotely. But I know Concom and others are hoping that we will get, something else in place so that we can all be remote to do the meetings, because some of these are critical for things
Right.
with Concom and Planning Board and others, I'm sure, that do have to have their hearings and whatever.
Got two things, and I left my notes back in my office, but number one, did receive word from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission that we did receive funding from the Department of Public Health for the COVID virus today. So there's a contract that we received. We received $4,000 towards that. So there is a contract for the chair to sign under any other business for that $4,000. Actually, probably, in all honesty, a little bit disappointed at the amount. Was actually originally thinking that we would probably get around $7,000, which even at that was probably less than I would have liked when the governor announced that some of these funds would be available to us. The letter or the email I received from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission did say that there may be some more funds coming next week, so we may be getting additional funds. So,
And what was the criteria? Was it based on population size or?
They did not say, and this is the one that basically there were two separate distributions. If you had participated in a health district, which might be a number of towns, they received those funds, and then the rest of them were actually allocated through the planning agencies around the states for the towns that did not belong to a public health district. So
I'm curious as to why they went through PVPC.
I've seen this in the past, and specifically when we had the tornado back in 2011, is that they, rather than work with individual towns, they looked for a mechanism or an agency that's already in place to basically dole out or manage those monies for them.
And what % do we get?
I wouldn't even try to calculate it in a percentage.
I would.
I would. I mean, of
Sorry.
what I believe was 2.3 million originally announced, less than 1%.
And what kind of things can it be used for, Ed?
What's that?
What kind of things can it be used for?
Let me go back to my office and get the. Actually, I might have it here. So.
While Ed is gone, can you hear me?
Yeah, he's actually back, but go ahead.
I'm just wondering if we could take this up with Lindsay to see if there's any help she could offer us.
Yeah, I think she's referring to Representative Lindsay Sabadosa. Yep.
So here are the allowable expenses under the government regulations, applicable
As of now.
as of now.
Yeah.
This 4,000.
For this grant. Allowable expenses, applicable funding areas, surveillance and case identification, including but not limited to public health, epidemiological investigation activities such as contact follow-up, monitoring of travelers, public health nurses, data management, isolation and quarantine, including but not limited to housing, wraparound services, security, environmental control, cleanup and waste management, and behavioral health services, surge public health staffing, risk communication support, public health coordination with healthcare systems, non-applicable funding areas, city, town, municipal activities, law enforcement, etc., food and other sundries. Resource areas, staff that are needed immediately, nurses, administrative support, supporting local government operations, call center support, answering local calls from constituents, contact tracing, epidemiology, contract tracing and personal quarantine guidance, working for Mass State epidemiologists, tentative plans to help increase capacity to address these immediate needs. The COVID-19 Command Center has connected with the 6 graduate schools of public health in Mass. We will leverage their communities of students, alumni, and faculty to meet at the key resources identified, i.e. nursing support, phone banking, and data management for contract tracing. More on this soon. Maven, new user requests to be sent to, and then approved users will be sent a Maven user request form, which once completed and sent back, is then submitted to the VG. Simultaneously, Maven staff will then contract the users to have them register for one of the 3 scheduled weekly trainings. Once they have completed the training and the VG has processed their account, they are granted access to Maven. Please note that the VG has specific requirements as to the email addresses that will be approved. The email must be affiliated with city, town, or organization email account. They will not accept any personal email accounts. 4, PPE. How cities and towns should make requests for PPE is in this chart. They don't give you a chart. Demand for, it's a link you click on. Demand for PPE is vastly outpacing the supply, that's for sure. As such, PPE is being optimized by need category and is outlined here. Another link. We are aware that some municipalities and other groups have been able to obtain PPE while others have not. The intent of the process linked above is to create consistency and clarity moving forward. We are actively working to source PPE with domestic and international suppliers in an effort to catch up with demand. And PPE is getting very interesting. Our fire chief found some materials and patterns to make gowns that we're going to be utilizing. Also became aware with the closing of salons that while nitrile gloves might be hard to find in the regular market, that there was actually a supplier that was selling to the salons that will now be selling to the town. So it's getting very creative to receive these items.
Well, it's a failure of the system, if you want to know what I think. I mean, it's great that all these creative masks, I have people making masks for me all the time at work, but the fact that our healthcare system has to go shopping at hardware stores and paint contractors is a failure of our emergency management system federally and statewide, if you want to know what I think. I won't say anything else. Would somebody else like to say something?
Yeah, I mean, just with regard to budgets and stuff like that, and I don't know what you folks think, and hopefully this isn't controversial, but you know, we can't use what's happening right now as an excuse to overdraw our budgets in an extreme way, especially if we can't guarantee that these things are going to get reimbursed. And so, you know, I think we still have to be extremely diligent, extremely conservative. We have to make sure that whatever it is that we're spending money for, that we're prepared to pay for that entirely by ourselves. And that's kind of the worst case scenario. And I think if we're not doing that, we're doing ourselves a disservice. And so I'm sorry if it's controversial, but you know, given some of the emails that I've seen from some of the people that are involved, I am nervous about that. And I think we need to talk about that. I really do.
Yeah. I think that given the fact that services are very different right now in town, I imagine that there would be savings, not to mention some departments will incur more expenses, but across the board, I'm not thinking that we should expect that all the budgets are going to be overspent because of the crisis we're in. I mean, I could see that some are actually putting out less expenses.
Which ones can you see doing that? I can't see that at all.
School department, supplies, custodial. I mean, there's a lot of.
Yeah, I just feel like those are. I mean, and not. I mean, I feel like those are inconsequential. I mean, we're still paying all town employees full fare, all teachers full fare. Like, I get custodial supplies, but we're just talking about an inconsequential
What
amount
would
of
be,
money.
what would be a cost other than PPE?
Well, PPE is certainly necessary and needed, and I'm sure the costs are going to increase with that, and I'm
Right.
sure we're going to need more
But I don't see
PPE than we
people
normally would
buying
need.
lots of, computer IT equipment for the purpose of getting through this.
I mean, I'm concerned with some of the things that have come across with additional personnel and hiring of additional personnel. I think we've all been CC'd on these emails. I mean, I could run down a list, but I don't want to necessarily, we've seen these things, right? And it's all predicated under the assumption that some of this stuff is going to get picked up by the state. And my feeling on this is unless we get some type of a guarantee that it's going to be picked up from the state, that I don't think we should be doing anything unless we have it in writing that it's actually going to get picked up downstream.
I think it's a point well taken, and I think most places, including the health system that I work in, there's a form that came right out as soon as possible from the finance director. Here's the form, and please incur the expenses. I don't think there's any guarantee of reimbursement, but I think from the get-go, people are encouraged to isolate expenses that appear to be directly related to this. But I agree that
Yes.
I don't think that's a reason to overspend.
Yeah, and I think we're doing the right thing by isolating the expenses and by adding them to a different line item, but that can't be an excuse to be like, and I'm not saying that it's frivolous, but to think that that means that you can overdraw your budget, because at the end of the day, the money has to come from somewhere. Worst case scenario comes entirely from the town, and if we overdraw these things, we don't have the money, so.
No, I think it's a point well taken. Do you want to comment, anybody else?
No, it's a point I hadn't really thought about a lot, but I follow your logic there. Yeah, no, I think there's,
I mean, we have to protect our frontline workers with PPE.
Yep,
Police
yep,
and
yep,
fire are paramount, and obviously those protections are going to cost more money, and we get that. But beyond that, there's going to have to be at least for me, a very big reason on why we would need to significantly overdraw accounts.
But I also think that, just so it doesn't go out as a negative, I mean, we have some high-level professionals, police, fire, et
true.
cetera, that we have to rely on their judgment. The PPE,
Of course.
I have no issue
Yes.
with that. But you're right, hiring somebody else, they need to go through the system. But I also think we got to let them know we're supporting them in this, and you need
Yep.
to get what you need.
Yep.
As long as it can be justified along the way. And
Yep.
if there's any
No, of course.
extraordinary
And that's the message I'm
costs, then
trying to send,
come and
too.
talk to us, and we'll work with you. But yeah,
Yep.
it's not meant to hamstring them by
Right.
any
Yeah.
means.
Francine, did you want to add anything to that? Francine, are you still with us?
No, it's a good, excellent point that Matt makes.
Okay, just speak up a little bit, okay? If you would.
I think the problem I'm having, and maybe you're having with me, is that there is a delay.
Yeah, it's because
Well,
she's
there's
listening.
definitely
She shouldn't be
there's a-
listening to the
I
TV.
don't think there's a delay in my phone and the speaker. There's definitely a delay in the TV. So I think that's what you're experiencing.
Okay.
Because I noticed that when we were speaking before, the TV was about 3 seconds behind this, but our phone is a direct phone call. So I think if you focus on the phone call, I think that will help.
Okay, I got it. Good.
But just speak up a little bit, okay? Because it's a little bit difficult to hear. I want to make sure everybody at home that chooses to watch it can hear you.
So you can factor in the beats with foul language.
So you said that Matt makes a good point. Did you want to expand on that?
That's what I said, yes.
Okay. Still not as loud as it was when she first, I don't know.
She's
My
not thinking
my
of it.
only concern, if there are boards or committees that have independence to do some purchasing or some hiring without going through the system?
There wouldn't be any hiring that I am aware of without going through the system. I'll use the term that you won't use, is I think we need to be safe. I think we need to give our first line responders the PPE that they need, even if we go over budget. However,
I agree
I
with
think
that.
what has to be done also is to take a look at, what is being purchased and bought, and okay, is there anything in there that we really may not be required, doesn't fit the bill, or might be considered frivolous.
Yes.
So.
Yep.
Can I ask a question? So this money comes in through PVPC. There's, 351 towns and cities in the state, and if you're part of a joint health district, they fund that entity, and everybody else goes through a planning commission.
Correct.
And I just feel like that it's a layer that ends up, we lose money doing that.
Well,
When
yeah.
I look at the direction of this particular $4,000, it's surveillance, contact follow-up, public health nurses, data management, isolation, quarantine. This is once a case has been identified in the town. And then Maven, then I heard that it's not used for law enforcement, administrative calls from constituents. That means we can't even hire an administrative assistant to be in the office handling calls from townspeople. So it seems like it's very focused on disease management as opposed to any levels of prevention and things like that. So that's important to remember.
Yep.
Maven, we already are connected to. That's the system where if someone goes to their doctor's or provider and they're diagnosed with a communicable disease, that information is put into a computer system, which then is accessed by the health department in the town, if people aren't aware of how that works. So then the health department of the town is the one that does all the case finding, looking at contacts and, who they're being in contact with, quarantine, isolation. So all of that is after something has been determined. So does this money come in through the operating budget and then you provide the funds based on how you think it should be spent? Fire department, EMTs, public health department, emergency management director? How does that get distributed?
I'd have to go back and look at this one because for the past 3 days, some of these requirements and filings have been changed from individual departments to the health director or the Board of Health to the EMD. In this particular case, I know PVPC has said that they don't have the funds as of yet, but they're sending out the contracts. And they expect them daily, so, or as far as the funds coming in. So they really didn't send out any information
Well,
at
hopefully
this
there are
point.
$4,000 worth of filing and reports due.
Yeah, and you're right, because yes, the planning agencies will take a percentage off the top, so it means that less that trickle down to the actual towns and the first line, so.
Yeah, okay, so that's not helpful, but anyway.
There was a mention of maybe some call center support, though. Would that be something that we might need to have at some point? Or I don't know what's coming in for the level of calls and so forth.
Yeah, I mean,
now.
as of yet, no.
Yeah,
But, it might be in the future.
Okay, so I'll sign I guess to accept the money. Why would we not? But I'm
Right,
just curious. I
exactly.
mean, these are questions. I mean, $4,000 is not very much money when we're in the middle of a pandemic and we're trying to get equipment to keep our people safe. And there's a lot of burden on the emergency management director and the Board of Health.
Oh,
So it's, I hope there's more money coming.
So do I.
Okay, so you had a second item.
Yes, just wanted to let you know is in following Governor Baker's new order of yesterday, today at noontime, any employees who were deemed by the department heads to be non-essential did go home. So they will be paid for at least the next couple of weeks under this order. Most of the department heads have reported back to me and let me know what employees are able to do or function at home to help them out in the departments. So we will still have some people in the building at times. I'll be here a good amount of time. Collector treasurer's office, town accountant. Some of those will also be working for home. Some have the ability through a VPN to access their files from home. Right now I'm working with one of our IT consultants to actually hook up our town accountant and myself through a VPN so we can access our files. So our game plan is to be safe, be healthy, but also to have the continuance of government for our core needs and our residential needs to go out. So if someone emails, if someone sends an actual U.S. mail, if someone leaves a phone message when someone isn't in that department, they will still get a response. Those are going to be checked continuously. Anything, we have been using the Dropbox for other things other than payments, so that will still get checked a couple times a day, and those will get distributed to the appropriate people. We're still doing inspection services as far as, through the building department goes. The collector treasurer's office is key as far as both doing payroll functions, payments coming in, the tax bills were going to go out. So that's one area that someone actually tomorrow is working from home, doing getting the mailings ready, doing the stuffings of the envelopes to get those out. All the library employees are going to be working from home on projects that they would be doing in the library, but the library is closed. So we will function as well as we can with the staff that we have. And obviously, I should say, police, fire, EMS, and also highway. All the highway employees by the governor's order are deemed, and I don't like, as many of you do, the term essential and non-essential. So,
Yeah, Ed and I talked about this yesterday, and we decided that the more appropriate term would be first line and second line employees.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just want to say that this always causes, a lot of feelings and about essential, non-essential, first line, second line. So I just wanted to say that everybody that works in this town is very important to us. And we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I would just encourage everybody to try to keep together and stick together when it comes to who gets to work from home, whose position enables it, where's the IT availability for it to happen or not. Most of us have jobs where, there's so many projects we could never get to, that there's organization and filing and other projects that can be done. Personally, I would like, the department heads, trusted department heads to, be the primary decision makers in this, along with Ed. But obviously, we need to talk about it. I just wanted to say that it always brings up comparisons, and I'd just like to encourage people to just be forgiving and stick together and allow this emergency to unfold, and then in a week or two, we'll figure out where things are at. So with that, I also wanted to remind people that on the website is a document that lists the phone numbers and the email addresses for all the town departments, and they're still able to get those. So if anybody needs to contact anyone here, they're still very much able to be reached. But would anybody like to talk about this and discuss this?
I think it's a great idea. Ed sent it out prior to the meeting and gave us some thought. Ed working with the department heads makes a lot of sense, and I think the people that are able to work from home are just subject to being recalled if needed, depending on the situation. So as long as everybody's under that and understands it, I'm fine with it. I think it's a good idea and keeps the people away from any kind of contact they can have around here.
I also read one of the documents that was, I don't know if it was, sure I've read so much lately, trying to keep up with everything, but there was a recommendation that there be a form that people can, I think it was from KP Law, our attorneys, that there be a logging system for hours worked to make sure that people are not working overtime, but there'd be some way of accounting for the work done and the time worked. So I'm hoping that that's something that can be devised if it's not already in existence.
Absolutely.
And what about things that are going to need signatures, or I'm just thinking of town clerk things, people that have got
Town clerk is
whatever to give to
going to do work from home somewhat, but will also be in the office.
It would seem like you'd have to have at least maybe one day a week in the office or something.
She'll probably be in even more than that, and because their elections are coming up, so. Yeah, and in fact, they were in for half a day today. They'll be in half a day tomorrow, and working from home. So there'll still be individuals here if someone needs a birth certificate, marriage license, or whatever. Those things will still get taken care of. Death certificate.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just go back and ask a quick question? The $4,000, do you know specifically what bucket of money that comes from? Is that Baker's latest announcement of the $15 million that he's infusing into this, or is that a separate issue? Because I just did a quick Google search on this, because $4,000 is not a lot, and I think we should be trying to do everything we can to get as many resources as we can. And I mean, on March 17th, Baker approved $15 million coronavirus package. So if this $4 grand's part of that, well, then that portion's out, and we'll have to look for the next one. But if this $4 grand's not part of that, I mean, there's broad discretion on what the $15 million can be used for, and it's being passed down to local boards of health and local government for
Yeah, we've had so many
application.
announcements lately.
I know. So I'm just trying to figure out which one it is.
My memory is that this was part of one that was announced last week.
Okay, which would be this one.
Yeah, because I remember I went over to the EOC and they were talking about it, and we actually had to put a budget to, I won't say a budget, but a request together in, I think, the period of less than 24 hours to send in for this. And don't hold me to this, but I believe our actual request was like 30 or 35.
Sure.
$1,000 out of that form that we were asked to put together, and Jerry Swanson, our health director, was the one that kind of coordinated that. So I mean, from that original exercise, from 30 or 35,000 down to 4, it's a sizable drop from what we were actually anticipating.
Yeah. No, I mean, all I'm just trying to figure out is there's sure to be more money released over time, and it's going to be coming in waves, and it's going to be under different funding bills and different infusion packages, and I just want to make sure that we're involved in every opportunity.
Yeah, and some is going to be on the state level and some on the federal level.
Yep.
Anybody else have any more comments? Francine, did you want to comment at all on this item?
No, I think that this, I sort of feel like an observer rather than a participant. But no, I think all the comments have been appropriate. I am disappointed that it's only $4,000. Just listening to the cost of all the protection equipment, that's needed, and it's certainly by our police and fire. And others, who have to engage in any kind of, the building inspector, if he has to go in and so on and so forth. That's very disappointing. So that was why I recommended that we go to our representative and see if there isn't some other recourse for us.
Yeah. I was actually also referring to whether you had questions about the remote working on the part of the town employees. Did you have a comment about that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
Did you have any further comment or question relative to the second item that he was raising about town employees working remotely?
I still don't. This is why I have to listen through the television, and then even though it's delayed, that way I can understand what it is you're saying. I can't hear it all. Sorry.
Okay. I'm going to try one more time because I want this to somewhat work. So if you want to turn up the volume on the TV and wait for the delay, I'm just curious because this is an important item, I think. Do you have any comment about the second item, which is the town employees working at home intermittently over the next 2 weeks, based on the recommendation from department heads, Ed, and us?
No, the plan sounds very reasonable, doable. Sounds very reasonable, doable. Very reasonable.
Okay. All right. So,
I only said that once. I'm not sure why it's repeating itself.
it's because the TV's on, that's why. That's okay, better 3 times than none. So I don't believe we have to vote on that. That's just a report from
Yeah, it's just a report.
Okay. All right, so do you have anything else?
No, everything else I've been involved with lately is all under the COVID-19, so I haven't had
All right,
much time for anything else.
Stay tuned on that. The next item is old business, is the shared building commission. I'll ask John maybe to speak to that to start.
Sure. If you remember from last time we met, I agreed to work with the town of Westhampton, see if we can put an agreement together, intertown agreement, so that we could share the building commissioner between the two towns, which would make it a full-time position, which would allow us to attract the best candidates. So Ed and I collaborated on that last week. We met twice, I believe, once here and once remotely, and we passed the rough draft by the chair of the select board in Westhampton, who looked at it and thought it was very reasonable. And then what we did, Ed sent it to KP Law over the weekend, asking them to get back to us by this meeting and review it. And they got back to us. They had some changes. Most of them were, I'd call wordsmithing changes, formatting changes. They like it certain ways, but the content was still there. They added one clause in there. So the agreement, if I'm right, Ed, is the one that KP Law okayed. And it basically says that we're going to share a building commissioner. Southampton would have the building commissioner 4 days a week, and Westhampton 1 day a week, which is basically what it's done now. And we would share expenses. There's a list of expenses attached that we came up with for a rough budget, figuring that this would start, if we went through with it, July 1 for fiscal 21. And we would share expenses. The town of Westhampton would put in on the salary line the difference between what we're paying now and the salary that we feel would be appropriate for the building commissioner. So our salary line wouldn't increase. Our actual budget on Southampton side wouldn't increase much at all. It's taking the money from Westhampton, rolling that in. So we could go through and Ed, correct me if I'm not saying it right, but we could go through with basically the budget we have now for our 4 days with the normal increases in a budget year, and we would add Southampton. We would be the lead agency. The building commissioner would work for us. All the benefits that we have would come from our policies and procedures. We would bill Westhampton on a quarterly basis, and they would reimburse us within 30 days, I believe the agreement says. And when the building commissioner was on their site, they would be responsible for, the workman's comp and the like, in case there was an accident. And when the building commissioner was on our site, we would have that responsibility. So I think we've got a good, solid agreement here. We need to review it and make sure that the whole board agrees with it, and if there's any comments, we'll make changes. And as a distinction, this is the agreement between the two towns. Once we have this, what I'm hoping you'll give me tonight is the okay to sit down with the current building commissioner to negotiate some terms for an employee contract, because the contract with the building commissioner will be with the town of Southampton. It would be independent of this agreement. That's saying we're going to share it with the building commissioner. They both would be for 3 years, starting July 1, because Ed and I were thinking that we don't want a 1-year agreement, because if something goes bad, we're into it with a contract to an employee. So the employee contract's got to mirror the agreement between the two towns to make sure we're covered. So am I missing something, Ed? And while I'm thinking about it, thanks for your collaboration on this. It was very helpful.
No, I think you did an excellent job summing up. You actually had two, one in your regular packet, and then on the left side of your packets is the one that KBP had made some edits to. And
Yep.
I mean, if you look at the original to this, it's worded better legally. They did add a clause or two into it, but essentially they didn't drastically change it. So I had looked at it, Mr. Martin had looked at it, and we are comfortable with that. And I don't know if you have heard back from
No, I sent it to Westhampton today and asked him to get back to me. He hasn't gotten back to me. I emailed it to him, and I also texted him saying it was there. So I don't know what's going on personally. It may be, an issue that they have to deal with more important. But preliminarily on Friday, he looked at the agreement we had and said that he felt very comfortable with it and presenting it to his board. And like we said, they added one one paragraph, which was 25, and it's that each town shall maintain appropriate workman's comp insurance and general liability insurance, which was a great add-on, because we didn't
Yeah.
think of that, yeah.
I'm going to need some time. I'm going to need to have some time to review this. I don't know if
Oh, absolutely.
we're planning on voting
Yeah.
on this right now.
I'm not looking for a vote on this right now. This is where we are, and we think it's pretty close to where it would be final, minus your
Can I just ask a couple quick questions
Yeah.
that might be in here but might not?
Sure.
And because it's not clear to me how this is getting funded. So I get that it's getting funded from Southampton and from Westhampton.
Right.
You've articulated that there's not much of an increase from the Southampton side. And
Right.
the increase to the building inspector's wage will be coming
From the
wholly
Southampton budget,
from
correct.
From Westhampton.
I mean, sorry, Westhampton, yes.
But just logistically, how that takes place, I wanna know about. So like, and the reason why I'm asking the question is because you indicated that we'll be reimbursed by Westhampton, which kind of implies that our line item will actually increase commensurate with the total bill for the building inspector, or the total wage for the building inspector, and Westhampton will be reimbursing us for a portion of that. So it will look like our line item has increased by the amount of Westhampton, and that I'd have to look at, but I wouldn't be comfortable
Yeah, and
with
it's-
that.
it's not
Because then
attached
it
to-
looks like we're employing a person at that amount.
Yeah, it's not attached to
Then our
this.
revenues would actually increase
Right.
along with that.
There'd be an offset.
It's an offset.
Sure, but I guess my, you know, not to bring in different things here, but if we show a line item for a position at a rate that is based on dual roles between Southampton and Westhampton, but we're the only one carrying that line item, and then there's money coming in on a different line item that's supposedly meant to offset that, how are we not exposed again to, you know, the wage act that we've already been exposed to in this particular position? So let's just say round numbers. I don't know what the building inspector's getting right now. I don't have the budget in front of me, but if the wage line goes from $70,000 to $90,000, and yeah, we're getting money in, but it's not able to be explained. It's just a check from Westhampton, and it's not directly attributed to that line, or that line is not broken out into two positions or two lines. Southampton's fair for that position, and Westhampton's fair for that. I'm just concerned about
That's what
how
that's
we
what-
are doing this on a
That's what the
financial
attachment
page.
to this
Right.
would break out.
There's an attachment.
The specifics.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
There's an attachment that shows Westhampton portion by line item, what their budget is. Southampton portion by line shows our budget, then a total line for the budget. So they will have a budget in Westhampton for the building commissioner, which we will have as part of our agreement here, so that...
But our budget line item is going to show the entire amount, Southampton and Westhampton
Yeah,
combined.
that's a good
I
question.
wouldn't be comfortable with that.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know
not
that
gonna-
we
like-
discussed that particular aspect of the budget.
I don't want to see it
Can it
like
be a
that.
separate line item that has a revenue and expense line to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll look at.
I think it's a good question. I think that we need to work that out on how we present it.
I do agree. I think we have to be cautious.
Yeah, because you want transparency.
I do. I just want it to be shown that that this is how we're doing things, not just like this portion. I get that there's a contract. I understand that, but optically it doesn't look right if that position is getting. And we will, surely when people are reviewing our budgets out in the public, they're going to look at that and be like, what's going on here? And they're not going to have a copy of the contract and go digging for it. I just think that it should be obvious to the layperson that's looking at this.
I think that's a conversation Ed, Vicky, and maybe myself can have, how you would.
Yep.
But
Right,
present it.
right.
That's not something we
Vicky
thought
would
of.
be the one to ask about that.
Yep.
Like right now, we're in a regional agreement with Hampshire Regional, and we can't seem to get a total line anyway, so
Yep.
there should be a way that we can get a partial line.
Maybe we can do something better on this one.
Bad example.
Exactly.
And then I just saw in number 3, and I haven't reviewed this at all, but I just saw in number 3, and I just had a question on it. It's number 3 in part A. All necessary steps in the hiring process and maintenance of the employee records of the building commissioner will be responsible of the town of Southampton. Should there be a change in the building commissioner, this will be done only after consultation with the Westhampton Selectboard.
Yep.
I understand that there's going to be consultation back and forth. This language to me, though, is a little bit vague on who has the authority, who has the hiring and firing authority over the position.
We have it because
And I understood that from what you said, but number 3 doesn't indicate that that's clear to me.
I think that
That was-
it's a little out of context for that. I mean, I think
Okay.
that is explained very well in the entire
Okay.
contract,
No,
yeah.
I'll review
That it
it.
is a Southampton contract with a 1 day a week or 20%.
Yep.
20%, yeah, so I think that to repeat it under each of the sections, I think would be
Okay.
I mean,
done.
it does reference the lead party in number 3.
Yeah.
That's us, so I mean,
Yeah.
I think that does, you know.
Any other points?
No, and I had asked John this before, and I just, maybe just to repeat the idea that with the contract between the two towns, that's something that would stay in effect for 3 years, irrespective of who the building commissioner
Correct.
is.
Right.
Yeah,
Because the employment contract is something separate, tied to it, but a separate document. So
Yeah.
should there be a change in the person, the agreement with Westhampton would still stand for 3 years.
correct. And now the employment contract, my recommendation is 3 years too, so they mirror each other.
Right.
Can something happen
Right.
that the building commissioner has to leave? Absolutely, but right, it's not tied in. That's where if we hire somebody new, we would do it in consultation. Doesn't give them the authority to override it. They just want to be part, and that's one of the things they brought. They want to be part of the,
If there were a new building inspector in that time, the new contract that was established with that new individual would have a timeline that's concurrent with the end of the.
well, that would be up to us.
Okay.
That would be up to us. Maybe at that point, say it's 2 years into it, I've done before, is then we take this agreement between the two towns, extend it for that period, and give a 3-year contract.
Understood.
But that can be decided at the time, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
between the both parties, yes.
And
I just want to say, that. Go ahead.
No, go
I just want to say that I read this and I think it's great. I think you did a great job, and I'm like really impressed. I also think it, hopefully might be the start of more shared services.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
That would be nice.
Yeah, and there is a specific reason that the wording there just says consult. It does not say basically that Westhampton has the right to approve,
Right.
vote, or anything else.
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
So what's the request then?
My recommendation is you folks go through this. We'll go over it next week. See if you send maybe some comments along the way to us, and we can make some changes. But the other side is hopefully you can get a vote to have me be the lead on negotiating an employment contract with the building commissioner, because that's all time sensitive. What I would want to do is sit down with him and say, here's what we can offer. What are you looking for? And try to come up with a reasonable agreement, then bring it back at the next board meeting. Because
Okay.
I expect to be doing this, if you give me the okay, this week.
Okay, we have another item under executive session relative to this, and that is discussion then of a contract. So that's already public and listed. So
Yeah.
I think that right now, are you looking for a vote in open session to authorize you to?
Start negotiations with the
start-
building
start-
commissioner. And
Okay.
not finalize anything, bring it back to the board at the next meeting.
Okay, can I just ask Francine first if you have any questions thus far before we entertain a motion?
No, it's all very thorough. A nice job for John and Ed. Thank you.
Okay, good.
You know, I think if we're going to have remote participation, we should get one of those little signs with a face, because I always forget she's on the phone there.
Just one question, do we already have this broken down budget with Westhampton and Southampton? I don't have it in my.
Yeah, do you have the attachment?
I don't think it made it in here. I will
Okay.
go
We'll
get it.
send it to you.
I'll go get it and hand it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, well,
That'd be good, yeah.
yeah.
No, I do think it's good, because I also think that our current building commissioner has done a lot of work with getting various education and certifications and that sort of thing, and this will now be more shared, and I think that's a good thing
Yeah,
between the two towns.
And I think regardless, it's where we need to go.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Where,
agree.
you know,
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
think so, regardless of who's involved, I think it's a good move.
Definitely.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion then to authorize John to negotiate?
I move to allow John to negotiate the building inspector's contract.
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion? Then a roll call vote, please.
Fowles eye.
Roland, aye.
Roden, aye?
Fishman, aye.
Martin, aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, John, very much for all the work you did on that.
Well
You're
done.
welcome, and thanks to Ed, too.
Yeah, Ed, too, absolutely. Thanks, Ed. Yeah, that's awesome. So the next is our new business, and the first is postponement of the annual town caucus, annual town meeting, and annual town election due to the Governor Baker's order in regards to the COVID-19 outbreak and special legislation. So I've received a lot of communications about this, and I just saw the one today that says that we are authorized to go ahead and accept a change in the date. The problem is, I thought it said anything that happens between now and the 30th of March.
In relation to which one?
Well, why don't you start with what you want to say, and then I'll bring up the
Okay.
question I had regarding today's.
Okay. So there are a number of items. Number one is the legislation to postpone the state special election from March 31st passed, and that new date for that election is Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. And I'll just put it in the back of your mind that, please keep in the back of your mind that that is or was the date of our originally planned town annual election. So that was one of the orders. We've also got a piece and a thought of postponing to a date in the future the annual town meeting. And then the legislation does allow us to postpone by vote of the select board the town caucus and the annual town election. Now, originally, Lucy had, let's see if I get these right, had recommended, let's see,
She had the caucus on May 12th was her first idea,
well, I'm going to kind of deal with the
town meeting.
town meeting and the election and work backwards, because I've got a number of those. Let's see. Originally, she had suggested to, let's see, yeah, the caucus on May 12th, the annual town meeting on June 16th, and the annual town election on June 30th. And she did send out the caveat today. I goes, okay, are you still comfortable with those dates? And she said, yes, as long as they are in agreement. I do have only one other concern, and that is people going on vacation, which would...
Yeah, June 30th is
Yeah,
the week of July 4th.
right.
That was the only thing
Yeah.
that jumped
Yeah.
out at me as
Yeah.
probably not
So-
encouraging participation.
Yeah, so then she said, so if that is a concern of theirs as well, and we can push it up a week so that the caucus is May 5th, annual town meeting June 9th, and the election on June 23rd.
We also were told through this recent communication that we can vote to delay it without picking a date.
You could do that too, yeah.
So just mentioning that in case people wanted to just,
Why wouldn't we? I mean,
Yeah.
why wouldn't we be able to pick a date?
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's,
I mean, what is our concern about before the 4th?
I just think if there's a town election on the 29th of June, it is the week of July 4th.
Yeah, people are going to be out of
It's a
town.
huge vacation
Okay.
week, so that would not encourage participation in the election, and you can't vote remote, early voting for a town election.
You can't do what?
You can't do early voting for town election, right?
Not early voting, you can still do absentee.
You can do
Absentee.
absentee,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It would
mean-
have to be on the 30th, okay, so then...
Yeah, so-
But then the issue also presents itself on the 7th, correct, for the same reason? Because what week will people take off? I mean, the 4th is on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So
Well,
do people take...
Usually it's the third, fourth
Yeah.
week.
Okay, so it'd be the week prior then, so you could do it after.
So it would be the 23rd if we're backing into it a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the dates that Lucy put as an alternative, May 5th, June 9th, June 23rd, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to Matt's point, I think we need to pick the dates now, because that way it'll let people plan if they
Plan.
want to be here for
Yeah.
the caucus or the election or whatever.
And it also lets the town clerk
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if something
Plan.
comes up in May that we're not past this crisis, there's nothing that prevents us from voting again, right?
Right.
Not that I'm aware of.
That was the
Long
only
as
thought I
I mean, the
had.
only piece I know of is as long, and I'd separate them out as far as votes go. I would do the annual town meeting as one, because we can do that without needing the special election vote. And then the caucus and the annual town election as the other one. But I know for the annual town meeting that as long as we have not posted for that annual town meeting, it's under the control of the select board. So you could vote again to postpone that
And it's 20 days, right? Before
for,
posting?
ATM?
no, this is an annual 7.
7, okay.
Yeah, a minimum of 7.
Yeah,
Okay.
Lucy says 35 between caucus and annual town election, so that's a number we got to be careful
Yeah.
of.
Okay, so can we repeat the dates then? June 23rd is the town election.
Which, yeah, if you pick that for the annual town election postponement, you would be choosing May 5th for the annual town caucus.
Yep,
May 5th.
yep, June 9th for ATM.
And like I said, I'd like to keep that as a separate
And when
vote.
ATM? When's ATM? June 9th?
June 9th.
June 9th, but I'd like to keep that as a separate vote.
Okay.
So we have enough time, though, between the caucus and the ATM? Is that-
Well,
The caucus has no pertinence to the ATM.
yeah,
I thought you just said we had.
no, it's
45 days.
caucus,
Election does, though.
caucus and
The election
annual
does.
town
Is
election.
there enough time there?
Yep.
Yes, she planned it out so that there's at least 35 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like less than 35 days.
Well, you got May 5th to June 23rd. That's
Yeah.
a long
That's
stretch.
caucus, though.
Right,
I
Yeah,
thought you were talking about distance between the annual town election and annual town meeting.
no,
no.
There's no issue there?
no.
And can we talk about the state election then? What was the date on
Oh,
that?
and that they postponed to May 19th.
And
Which,
wasn't there a rule that it couldn't be part of any other, so we couldn't have
I
it
was
be
going
any
to
other
say, can we
day?
do this all at the same time?
we'd probably need special legislation to do that, number one. Number two, with how things are playing out, if we're looking for good participation, in my humble opinion, for the annual town election, I think May 19th would still be too early. As far as the coronavirus effect. And that's my humble opinion at
Okay,
this
so the
point.
state election date would be, the state senator election date would be,
19th.
Yeah,
May 19th.
correct. And
That does feel
and that's what
early.
they voted on, so that is the date.
Yep.
Unless.
And if people
there's
already
an issue,
voted,
unless
early
they-
voting,
Unless they do it again, yeah.
Yeah.
their votes count if they did early voting, right?
What's that?
If you already voted, early voting, your vote still counts?
I haven't seen anything on that, but that was, I've heard that somewhere. Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah,
heard too.
That was my understanding.
So are you asking, Ed, that the ATM be voted on separately from the other two?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So do we need a vote on this? Okay. So if you don't mind, you want me to make a motion?
Yep, can I just ask Francine if you
Yes.
have any comments about these dates, or do you need to have them reread? Francine,
Yeah, no, I didn't hear it.
do you have the dates written down, and do you have a comment about them?
It's really frustrating. I don't hear you without
okay.
the television.
Okay, that's okay. Did you catch the dates on the television then?
Yeah, I can. Hold on.
Yeah. Well, would somebody like to read the dates that we have?
Yeah. Okay, Francine, what we're talking about is a caucus on May 5th, annual town meeting on June 9th, and the election on June 23rd.
Those dates sound good to me.
And then the other one would be the state senatorial election, which
But my only concern would be the state senatorial election. My only concern would be the state senatorial election. My only concern would be the state senatorial election. My only concern.
I want to say something to you.
just
If that's the reason, because you're not talking into this phone, that's why she can't hear you through
but
this.
it's on speaker.
No, it's not, it's through the Bluetooth.
Oh, okay.
See? That's the issue. If it were on speaker, and
I hear nothing.
we'd be able to, but we can't.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
try that then. But then,
Just so you know, I don't hear anything at all. I don't know if you hear me.
okay,
It also functions.
Yeah, hold on, Francine, we're not really saying anything.
okay, hang on one second.
We can hear her, but she can't hear us because we're not talking directly into the phone. 'Cause that thing,
I think in order not to disrupt the meeting any more than I think I already have, why don't I just listen in? You have a quorum, and I'll just watch until we straighten this out, the technology.
Okay,
Thanks, Francine.
okay, thanks. Okay,
Okay.
tried.
So, I'm
Okay,
gonna-
so we're talking about dates
Yeah.
and, do
Oh,
we want to have a separate vote on the annual town meeting, so somebody like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we move the date for the, or select the date for the annual town meeting as June 9th.
Second.
Any further comment? I guess we don't have to do the roll call anymore, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so I'll make a motion, we have the caucus on May 5th and the election on June 23rd.
I'll second it.
Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Did you get the all, who made the motion and seconded, Ed?
Yeah, John made the motion and Chris seconded.
And June 23rd. And let's hope things will be quiet and possible by May 5th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope we can do it on May 5th.
Ready to move on, Ed? The next items on the new business have to do with COVID-19. So Governor Baker's order in regards to the COVID-19 outbreak and special legislation, COVID update, and then also the federal COVID-19 employment and labor law.
And actually, one of the reasons I had put this on here was it's such a quickly changing topic and environment out there. One of those things happened yesterday is the governor came out and issued a new order. A couple of things in there. One is he definitively dropped the number of individuals who can gather together in any one place from 25 to 10. The other is he issued a rather lengthy 7-page order for non-essential businesses in Massachusetts to close as of noontime today, coupled with a stay-at-home advisory for non-essential or second-line employees. So that went into effect at noontime today, and in some cases, I think We're still trying to figure out what essential or non-essential businesses may or may not be. I mean, some items were pretty clear in that. You know, he had said, you know, that package stores may stay open. He still encourages food establishments or you know, restaurants or bars that serve food to serve as takeout or delivery. And I did see something, and I don't know if it was coupled with that order yesterday or it's a new piece of legislation that may actually allow those establishes such as bars or restaurants that have liquor licenses to actually be allowed to deliver sealed beer or wine along with those food deliveries. So that was a little bit interesting, to say the least. Obviously, healthcare workers fall into the essential category of that. Some of the other institutions had already been closed up, like gyms and whatever. But there's, you know, professional establishments. There's retail establishments that have closed up. There are professional establishments that, you know, might have done taxes or other things which are now closed unless you happen to also have a payroll service along with them. Actually, one of the interesting things, and I don't know if they've actually come to a resolve on this one, was last night and this morning there was some discussion on the fact that construction services were listed as essential services. The discussion is now evolving around, okay, does that just mean government-funded construction services are essential services, or all construction services are essential, meaning having work done at your house, or even at your private business or whatever. I had a short talk with Tom about that today, and I have not seen any advisory one way or the other as to which way that one's going to go, but they were having some conversations on that as of last night and this morning. So as we talked about earlier, as part of the stay-at-home advisory, and the governor has not put a lockdown into effect or a mandatory piece on the stay-home part of it. He has said that, yeah, if people want to go out to the grocery store and get groceries, or go to the hardware store and get something to fix their house, that they should be able to do that. But we had talked a little bit earlier about what we were doing here, and I think it's it's definitely a part of how do you provide essential government services and advise your constituents, residents, of what is going on with COVID-19, give them advisories and what have you as a government, but still have a safe workplace, improve your social distancing, and improve how you were contacting, or the number of people you were contacting on a daily basis, to try and shall we say, lessen the curve of the spread or the outbreak of the coronavirus. So it is very, very interesting times out there. And I did put a couple of the updates in your packets just for your own information from KP Law, and I'm getting one or two of these daily, but these were the probably the most up-to-date or the newest ones. They had put out one on March 21st, responses to frequently asked questions arising in the land use context in light of the COVID-19 virus outbreak, talking about existing statutory deadlines for action on land use permit applications, state or told during to the current state of emergency. As of the 21st, there had been no legislation filed or approved that might extend deadlines for whether it's like conservation commissions, ZBAs, planning boards, and the like, that they were still to be held under the statutory requirements of the public hearings, the timelines. And one of the concerns there is, and I won't get into the exact timelines, but the statute spelled out if there was no action within X amount of days, that permit, license, whatever you wanted to call it, was to be considered as passed or approved. So that's one concern on a lot of towns and cities. I saw today that the governor has filed legislation to that effect. It has not been approved. And the last piece I saw, it would stay the timelines and requirements for public hearings and actions on some of those statutory timeline requirements to what I saw was to 45 days after the declaration of emergency is lifted in Massachusetts. So I think we'll be finding out more on that in the next few days, and I will share that with the Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and ZBA for anything that they have coming in or been filed, so that they're up to date on any new changes in those timeline requirements.
I believe both have got meetings coming up.
I know, I seem to remember, I think April 6th or something sticks in my mind for conservation, so.
Planning Board is April 1st. Conservation did push it off a little bit just because they wanted to see if we could get the virtual meeting technology in
Yeah.
place. So they
Yeah.
moved theirs to the 13th, I believe.
Okay.
But hopefully by then we can do something, because those are two that really, with their public hearings and everything, they really do need to be able to operate
Okay.
somehow better than maybe
Yeah.
we are right now. And I certainly think the video conferencing ought to be able to work.
Okay. And then the other one that's in here was on the Family First Act, which you had asked about, and I listed it as a separate agenda item, so.
Yeah. Oh, and one other one scheduled is actually the first is community preservation. I know they had a couple of proposals they were going to review on April 1st,
Yeah.
if they're still meeting. So to the extent we can figure those meetings out, that would be good.
Any other comments about the latest on COVID-19 and how our town responds? Or any questions? I would like to say thank you to first responders. This is certainly a difficult place for them to be, especially with the scarcity of PPE. And just want to say thank you for being out there on the sort of front lines of this, and stay safe.
Yeah. And I think thank you to both the chief of police and fire
Yeah.
department chief
Yep.
that are putting out communications, at least on Facebook or the Southampton community page, just kind of keeping people informed, which is
Yep.
very helpful.
Yep. Thank you, Ed.
Oh, you're welcome.
Would you like to read the PCF? Yeah.
Sure. Yep. Oh, you're gonna. Thank you. Is that where we are right now?
We have
Rita?
two, yep, we have any other necessary business would be the PCFs, there's
Yes.
two of them.
Okay, so they're both PCFs. The first one is for Joshua Lamb. He, for the police department, submittal for contractual step increase. On March 19th, Josh Lamb receives a contractual step increase from step 1 to step 2, and so that's what this PCF is for. From my look at it, it looks like the correct boxes have been checked. It's been signed by PPB and town accountant. and the department head. It's just looking for our signature. This is on the latest form, which is much easier to work with.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and the second one is for Daniel Hurley for Police Department, replacing Officer John Roach. And then the second department, he's also going to be working for the Fire Department as well, it appears. Auxiliary Police Officer to part-time officer, successful completion of field training. This is a change from an unpaid auxiliary position to a paid part-time position, not to exceed 19 hours. Part-time non-benefited, not to exceed 19 hours, filled out correctly on the form. No benefits. And signed by the appropriate people, department head, town accountant, PPB chair. So I'll make a motion, if I may, to approve the PCF for Joshua Lamb and the PCF for Daniel Hurley.
I'll second it.
Any discussion, questions? I have one. Do we have to approve when someone gets a step increase?
Interesting question.
It's one of the things I've noticed, and I've actually talked to the chief, and I'll talk to Art Lawrence, chair of the PPPB, about it, is I'll have to go through the rules and regulations, but I personally don't understand if we have someone either under a personal service contract that calls for something, or specifically a union contract that calls for step increases, of why we need to go through this process. It's spelled out in that union contract. We're held to it. I would basically think that our request of the pertinent department head for that union contract and the town accountant would suffice. But I'll look into that further, because it seems, again, we're generating a lot of paperwork and taking time that may not be necessary.
Well, it just seems it's part of the contract. I'm not sure why we would have to, if it's already, the department head should be able to.
I would, yeah,
do that
I
themselves.
totally concur.
Okay, so we have a motion and second. Any other questions or anything? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, and one other thing,
Thanks,
Mr.
Matt.
Martin, did you want to talk about that employment law, the Family First at all? Okay, all right.
Okay, so we don't have any license warrants or minutes to approve. We do have select board meetings planned for next Tuesday. That still needs to happen, right? And then April 14th and 28th. And if folks are interested in remote participation, we can look into a dual speaker. This one, apparently the problem was that I would have to be speaking directly into this, but it was connected to the speaker, so it can't do both.
Do you want me to try to see if I can find something that?
Yeah, that'd be great. And then people have the option of being able
I
to
will do that.
remote participation. Thanks.
Yep.
Open time for the public. We did get, actually, there were 2 emails.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think we only have the copy of one of the letters. Was the other one,
Should be,
both of them?
they both should
Or
have
maybe
been
it
in there.
I have it on my email in case I need to read it, but,
I'll be happy to read them.
okay, good.
Yeah, one's.
What are we reading? I can
One's
read
an
it. What
email.
are we reading? The 5G thing?
Public, yeah, there
one
was a
for
letter.
5G and then one on
You want
one
me
of the MPI recommendations. So this email was received from Heather Pellegrini. And it's, I am writing to raise my concerns over 5G small cell installations and what, if anything, our town leaders can do to mitigate any potential harmful health effects while ensuring we remain on par with other communities with respect to regulatory bylaws and potential income opportunities. I don't have much knowledge on the subject, but I have found a very informative study which I have attached to this email. I was hoping to present this at an upcoming meeting, but currently my schedule doesn't permit my attendance. Considering the rapidity with which 5G is being deployed, and to my knowledge, no current discussion among our boards on the matter, I feel compelled to bring it to your attention. Please review the attached, particularly what other Mass towns are doing, and let me know what you think. Kind regards, Heather Pellegrini. And there's about a 30-page report, which is entitled 5G in Belmont, report of the IT Advisory Committee, dated November 25th, 2019, that Heather had sent along as an attachment for our information.
Great, okay. We can look through that and address it. I mean, if it would be great if Heather was able to come and speak to it, or we had somebody that could speak to it. She did say that she wasn't an expert on it, but she wants it to bring it to our attention, so.
Yeah, and I'll see what I can find out on
I think that'd
this
be great.
state level, if there's any concerns or
I mean,
that they know of on this.
I mean, I read a little bit about this, and I don't know specifically what she's worried about, but I think that what she brings up in me reading this and knowing a little bit about 5G, like the implementation of 5G across this country is going to create a lot of it's going to have a lot of infrastructure. Like you can't, the cell towers that exist today, they cover like many square miles, and they're relatively unobtrusive. Like 5G is going to have to be installed on like every telephone pole, and it's really actually not going to penetrate buildings that well either. So it's going to create this, it's going to be unsightly or sightly, depending on how you look at it. There's just going to be something to look at, and it's not going to just be a stick in the middle of a field that covers 10 square miles. It's going to be something on every telephone pole. So I think, I don't want to speak for her, but I'll just speak for myself in that this email is helpful in that I think we should at least be considering, or planning. Part of the planning board should probably be just factoring in, like, do we want to start developing some type of policy for when and if this wants to come in? And I think what Heather's suggesting in her email is that, there's going to be a market for this, like where cell manufacturers, contract with private people on their private land to put up a tower, and they get a lease on it and everything else. I think similarly, it seems like what she's concerned about is that happening on individual property. And the feasibility of this is it's going to have to be on every person's property in order for this to work. And so like that might create some type of a zoning issue.
And the other thing that it's, I will say, resurrecting at this point in time is when cell phones first started getting popular, at least the smaller ones that you carry with you and not the big portable ones that we had in our cars. One of the concerns, and there were reports both ways on it, are does the radio frequencies from both having that cell phone to your ear and the cell towers, does it increase the chance of causing cancer in an individual?
And if you're going to put them on every telephone pole in every yard, then
so they're going to be more populated than what we're used to. So how is that going to affect our health?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd just be helpful. I think it is a planning thing at this point, where the planning board should just at least look at that and either develop something so that we're ahead of it.
Yep, and it did go to the Board of Health and also to the Planning Board and Town Administrator as well.
Yep.
And then the second one was from Heather Pellegrini, and it also went to Planning Board Paul Deman and Master Plan Implementation Committee Michael Rosenberg. It says, Dear Paul and Planning Board members, I'm writing to express my concern over a proposed strategy 8.2C set forth by the Master Plan Implementation Committee, which suggests increasing the minimum required lot size and residential rule from 1.5 to 2 acres. In the absence of updating minimum lot size requirements uniformly across all residential zones, such an action would be deemed snob zoning. Such practices serve to discriminate and segregate based on socioeconomic factors and defeat the goal of making housing more affordable. This action would effectively impose a price floor for the cost of housing, making it impossible for people who live below a certain means to afford them. Secondly, to single out one group of landowners and decrease the value of their property in such a selective, inequitable, and injurious manner would create a grievance for those affected. Unless the recommendation is to unilaterally rezone our residential districts in a fair and impartial way, this action would be completely unjust. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Heather Pellegrini. And from my understanding, there were some goals and thoughts that were put out by the Master Plan Implementation Committee, but those really have not been prioritized at this point in time, or the thoughts or the brainstorming that went into it. At least I have not seen any hardcore recommendations for the planning board to think about or to implement at this point in time.
Yeah. Ed, perhaps I can speak a little bit, since I'm on the master plan committee here. I think Heather's probably referring to the presentation that Mike did in front of the select board that had quite a variety of recommendations for each chapter in the master plan, which was essentially a synthesis of the recommendations that had been put forth many, many years ago. So the only thing I can say about this is there's nothing new. There's no new strategies or anything devised by the master plan committee. What you might have seen on the screen was taken directly from the existing master plan that was done back in 2013. So those were recommendations for that particular chapter, and we pulled out recommendations that seemed to have some relevance that we wanted to have further discussion on. So it's nothing new that's been proposed by master plan committee at all. It's something that was part of the original plan, and now that we're starting to hopefully talk about the master plan and trying to make an action plan out of it with the help from the PVPC, this will probably be one of the points that we'll be talking about, over the next few months. But there's nothing new here that we've proposed.
That makes sense.
I will say that after her letter, I did go back to look at the document that Master Plan Implementation Committee chapters, strategies, target dates, and status. So I hear you, Chris, that nothing was new, but I think she was speaking to a very specific strategy that talked about increasing lot size for certain zoning from 1.5 to 2. So, I think point well taken. I think this was a specific strategy. It might have just been carried over. None of this is actionable without the support and input from townspeople, planning board, and a number of other relevant committees.
No, absolutely. And I think the plan as presented by Mike is kind of our starting point now, working with the consultant to see, okay, what is it that we really do need to tackle and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So again, this is not, it's a relevant issue, but it's nothing that was different than what's been online for 6 years. Yeah.
Right. Heather, thank you for submitting those. And if anybody else from the public has anything that they would like to submit in writing from this meeting or online, please feel free to do that, and we will include your public comments at the next meeting. So I think that takes care of everything. At this particular point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn and go into executive session. Pardon? Yeah, thanks. We have 2 items, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, shared building commissioner contract. Executive session under General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation in the manner of Regina Shea Sullivan v. the Town of Southampton Selectboard et al., CA number 1680-CV-00135, because the chair has declared that the discussing of this matter at an open public meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigation position of the town. So a motion to go into, motion to approve executive session? Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Matt and then John. So the roll call vote then?
All's aye.
Roland, aye.
Roden, aye.
Martin, aye.
Thank you.
Did you announce we're not coming back into open?
Oh, thank you. We're not coming back to open session after this. Thanks.